Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. Today I'm going to be talking about a report that I've looked at for several years. It's from ATX called the 2050 Project, and it's very interesting. There's a lot of information in there about cable operators, what their plans are, and a lot of specifics about what their plans are for fiber and upgrading to fiber, or what they plan on doing to increase the speeds on their current DOCSIS technology. And I will be right back to take a detailed look at that. See you in just a moment. Hey, thanks for joining me again. This is Rick Usey with Broadband Deployment News, and I want to take a look at this report. As I mentioned, I've looked at this several years now. It's from a company called ATX, the 2050 Project. In the description of this video, I linked to where you can download this, where you can look at it and download it. I wanted to go through not every slide, but there's a lot of information in here, but I wanted to look at some really what I thought were interesting ones and specific ones about cable operators' plans with fiber, and a lot of that's what they cover. They've got some other information and things that they talk about in there, but that is primarily what I was going to go through here. So first off, kind of, who are they surveying here? So you can see here, this is showing you the, in addition to the key findings, but I'm going to go through the findings here that I was going to talk about. But you see here, most of these are going to be MSOs. You see 44% are above 1 million, and this is homes passed. This is not subscribers, so they're, it's not like they've got 1 million subscribers, but they could be 1 million homes passed. So you got 44%. Then you've got the next biggest chunk here, 24% is 10,000 to 100,000. So that's under, let's say, under 100,000 subscribers is 10,000 to 100,000 homes passed. You got 16% that are 100,000 to 1 million homes passed. Then you've got some smaller operators represented here. You see 12%, 1,000 to 10,000 homes passed, and you've got 4% below 1,000 homes passed. Those are really small operators, and you might be surprised to know that there are some operators that are small like that out there. They're in a small town. They've been around forever. They started in that town providing cable TV years and years ago, and then they migrated to broadband. In addition to that service, they started offering broadband, and they literally could have 300, 500, 800 customers. They're under 1,000 homes passed, and there are small operators out there like that, so you may not be aware of that. And as far as where these cable operators are located, you can see here that 79% are located in North America, and then you've got 14% in Latin America, and you've got 4% in Europe and 3% in the Asia Pacific area. And this is not that surprising. This could be where ATX has their customers. I'm assuming they're surveying customers and prospects, whoever they have information that they can reach. And ATX, by the way, they are a company that provides equipment for cable operators. They provide fiber equipment as well, but I think primarily for cable operators to do fiber deep, those kinds of things. But those are who their customers are, and this is probably where many of their customers are, but it's also where a lot of cable operators are, because cable has been kind of what got started here in these areas. Obviously we had phone service and DSL, but cable modem service has been and still is the leading provider of broadband service in the United States. Obviously, fiber has been catching up, but DSL and cable were battling out for a while, but cable surpassed that quite quickly because of the higher speeds that cable and DOCSIS were able to provide. And then in Europe, I think you had a lot of DSL service there as the older service as well, but not as much cable modem service. And then also a lot of fiber is what they've been putting in there as well. So I think that might be why. I think there's fewer classical kinds of cable operators in Europe. Could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. Optimizing DOCSIS 3.1, which approach best describes your current plans to increase upstream traffic on your DOCSIS 3.1 network? And just some background, if you're not that familiar, DOCSIS has been around a long time. Started with DOCSIS 1.0 when we first started having cable modem service, and in the beginning it was a one-way service. Basically, you had your cable modem, and you were able to receive data through your cable modem through the coax cable coming into your house. This was when it was very new. You started doing something over your coax cable in addition to video. So you'd get at that time, pretty good speeds coming down your cable modem, but then your return path went through the telephone. It was called a telco return. So you received information down through your cable connection, your coax cable, and then a telephone connection returned what you were sending back to the internet. And there wasn't much going back to the internet. It would be like, hey, I want to go to this web page. So telco return, it would send the request to the web servers, DNS, all that stuff would happen, and then the content would come back down through the cable modem and you'd get a fast web page. Well, it wasn't that long after that we went to two-way cable where it was transmitting over the cable in both directions. But the way that it started is why today we have much faster download speeds on cable technology than upload speeds, because there was much more need for download speeds as you would be receiving lots of information. But again, the information you were sending up wasn't as much. Now it started to be more as people started to upload pictures and maybe some videos and those kinds of things. So we started to have more and more needs for upload speeds. And today, with people doing streaming like I'm doing today and Zoom calls and whatnot, upstream has gotten a lot more important. It's still not as important nearly as downstream speeds. So when you hear about a gigabit fiber service, it sounds great, and the gigabit coming down is great, but most people don't need a gigabit going up. It's possible, certainly depending on what people are doing, that some are going to need much, much higher upload speeds. But that's the reason that cable is not symmetrical, is because it's always been based on what people were needing, and you're going to take the most spectrum that you can to try to provide download speeds and less spectrum to try to do upload speeds. So went to DOCSIS 3.0, and that was certainly an improvement over 2.0 and 1.0. And then DOCSIS 3.1 several years ago. Most operators are on DOCSIS 3.1 now, but you'll see that some are not, which is still surprising to me, that some haven't upgraded. But again, we've got some smaller operators in areas that maybe have not had the reason to upgrade. They're providing okay speeds and they don't have any competition, and they have not been motivated to upgrade, or they don't have the money to upgrade. So those could be reasons. And those operators are not going to be around much longer if they're not able to provide good speeds, let's say over 100 by 20 consistently, because of course that's considered underserved now with BEAD funding, those kinds of things. But we can see here what their approaches are. So most, again, are on DOCSIS 3.1, and many are moving, especially the larger guys, we saw how many MSOs answered this, are moving to DOCSIS 4.0, which can provide symmetrical speeds, maybe 5-6 megabits per second symmetrical. That's way faster than anybody needs right now, certainly in a home. And businesses, you can provide pretty good business service, but generally, cable operators are providing fiber to businesses. If they have a business that needs more than, let's say, 6 meg symmetrical, they're providing maybe XGS-PON 10 gig symmetrical using fiber and not cable modem service. But we can see here back 2022, 23, and 24. So in 2022, and what they're talking about here, mid splits and high splits, this is a way to make your DOCSIS 3.1 plant have more spectrum available on the downstream and the upstream by taking that spectrum and going higher using more spectrum, and then splitting it in such a way that you're going to have more upstream spectrum and even more downstream spectrum, because you're using more spectrum and you're doing those splits. So you've got mid splits that you can do and high splits. And you can see that we've got in 2022, 47% we're saying mid splits, then 43%, and now 30%, so that dropped down, but we have more people thinking about doing high splits, which is going to allow them to go further up in the spectrum and get even faster speeds. So we've seen that progression a little bit. So they're looking at how they can squeeze even more out of their DOCSIS 3.1 network through high splits now. What I found really interesting about this was, here we've got unsure, so you've got 16%, 7%, and 8%. So unsure has stayed about the same the last 2 years, but I found this interesting. Yet to upgrade to DOCSIS 3.1, 5%, and that went up to 9%. So I'm just wondering if some number of people are just smaller operators that answered this time that didn't last time. So we had less folks answering that were on DOCSIS 3.1, because certainly that should not go up. It should go down, because you would have people that were on DOCSIS 3.0 before, even if they said they had no plans, maybe they did. So it shouldn't, the no plans probably should not have gone up. I suppose it's possible. And it could be that even if the same people answered this, that it's like, we were planning on going, but now we're not going to. We're going to go ahead and go. Could be they're thinking, we're just going to go ahead and overbuild with fiber. We're not going to do DOCSIS 3.1. So that's something I just now thought of, that it could be another reason that went up. So you see there that it's pretty consistent, but those were some interesting changes. And actually, again, this is the high split seems to be an area that has increased there. What impact will the availability of DOCSIS 3.1e have on your DOCSIS 4.0 adoption plans? And this is a fairly new thing. This is something that I was just recently was becoming aware of. I think it was late last year that this started being talked about. But there's two primary and maybe the only chipset makers for cable modems. That would be Broadcom and MaxLinear. And both are working on what they're calling different things, and nobody's really given it the right name or a permanent name yet, I guess. They're calling it DOCSIS 3.1e here, ATX is. I've heard other things. I've heard DOCSIS 3.1 extended, which the E could be. I've heard DOCSIS 3.1 plus. So what this is it's rather than having to go to DOCSIS 4.0, if you go from 3.1 to 4.0, you have to make changes in your hardline cable plant. I think maybe with the amplifiers and some other, maybe the CMTS and some other changes that you have to make, in addition to having a DOCSIS 4.0 modem at the subscriber location to be able to get some of these faster speeds. What this allows, I believe, through these chipsets is for cable operators to put a modem out there, and it would probably be a DOCSIS 4.0 modem that supports DOCSIS 3.1e, and it allows the cable operator to bond more channels together into what's called OFDM channels. It's not really bonded channels, but you have a OFDM channel. Normally channels, and again, this is kind of legacy from the cable video service, is the channels were 6 megahertz, which was equal, I believe, to the channels that you'd get on your TV antenna, the rabbit ears that you put on your house. So you have these 6 megahertz channels, and cable operators, when they had their spectrum on cable, they would split those channels up on 6 megahertz channels. And in between each 6 megahertz channel, you have some guard bands to prevent interference between the channels. And the same thing continued with cable operators over a piece of cable, as not just over the air. And OFDM made bigger channels, so instead of 6 megahertz, they were much larger, and because they were much larger, you didn't have to have a guard bands in between each. You just had guard bands between your FDM channels. And I believe that DOCSIS 3.1e, from what I've read, allows you to have more OFDM channels, which means you can have more of these large channels that can give you greater bandwidth and faster broadband speeds, and without having to go to DOCSIS 4.0. You can get a 4.0 modem, or a modem that supports 4.0 and DOCSIS 3.1e, and then you can have these additional OFDM channels. So that's what this is asking about. And you can see here, we've got no, and as I read this, we saw unsure in some of those other answers. They send these to people who answer these surveys, and it's possible, depending on who it goes, it's possible that person knows the answer to every single question. And it's possible that they get some questions where they're like, I'm not sure what that is, so I'm just going to put unsure. We're unsure what we're doing, or he's unsure what it means, or she's unsure what it means. So it could be the unsure sometimes is they're not really sure what it is, and they need to do research. So you can see here, 42% say they're still evaluating it. A lot of that could be, we're still evaluating it. I think I've heard of that. Or it could be we're evaluating it. Yeah, I'm really interested in this. We're waiting to see what's going to happen. It could be we're evaluating it. I really don't know what this is, but I'm going to start evaluating the answer after I finish this survey. Then you've got 24% say no impact. That could also include people that, obviously, it could include people that don't know what it is. It's like, I don't know what that is. I'm sure it's not going to have an impact. So I'm less confident in some of these answers here because this is such a new thing. But we'll take it for what it is. We've got 16% will likely eliminate their move to DOCSIS 4.0 because of this. So these are probably people that understand what it is and have been looking at it and going, you know what, we don't need to upgrade a lot of our cable plant to do this and to get a lot faster speeds. So that could be these. I would be confident these people probably know what it is. Then we got 18% say will likely delay migration to full DOCSIS 4.0. So again, these are probably the folks that I feel most confident know what it is. And certainly some of these still may know what it is and evaluating. But again, it's so new, it may be that a lot of people here are just not even sure what this is. But this will be something I think that cable operators are going to be very interested in, because generally they've been in the path of, we're going to go DOCSIS 3.1, and we're going to stick with that, and we're going to do some extended spectrum DOCSIS, which that's kind of 4.0, but we're going to go ahead and increase as much as we can the the spectrum that we have, doing high splits and mid splits, and now they have an option to do this DOCSIS 3.1 extended, or E, to be able to get more bandwidth without having to go full 4.0, and this is going to save them lots of money. With DOCSIS 4.0 essentially enabling MSOs to offer similar speeds and capacities as fiber providers, please select the broadband service attribute that will have the biggest impact on subscriber selection in the future. In other words, why will subscribers be selecting their operator if you're kind of offering the same speeds? And, obviously, again, with DOCSIS 3.1, certainly DOCSIS 3.0 is not going to be competitive. DOCSIS 3.1 is competitive on the downstream in most cases with what consumers need. You can do a gig down with no problem on DOCSIS 3.1, not as fast up. But as you get to these, DOCSIS 3.1e, you can do even faster on the downstream. And it's as fast, let's say, as 6, I believe I've heard 6 megabits per second, I think. Gigabits per second. I'm saying megabits. 6 gigabits per second. On DOCSIS 4.0, they say maybe 6 symmetrical on DOCSIS 4.0. So they're saying here, with DOCSIS 4.0, you can be offering something certainly that fiber can offer. You probably can't do 10, you can't do 25, which fiber can offer, but nobody needs that. So it is competitive. DOCSIS 4.0 is competitive with fiber from the standpoint of speed. So what's going to be most important to the consumer? So they have identified reliability as being very important, and also almost the same percentage here, speed and capacity. So as consumers are looking at their cable operator and their fiber operator, maybe that are competing in the same service area, one's got DOCSIS 4.0, one's got fiber, and this is happening today with Comcast, let's say, and maybe AT&T. Comcast has DOCSIS 4.0, let's say, in some areas, and they can offer multi-gig speed symmetrical. You've got AT&T that can offer multi-gig speed symmetrical, maybe not quite as fast on the Comcast side, depending on what AT&T is putting out for fiber, but they're very similar there. So what else is important? So they mention reliability, and this is an Achilles heel here for cable operators because they still have coax in the network, even if they're doing DOCSIS 4.0, even if they're going fiber deep and trying to get that fiber as close as they can to the customer. And even though that fiber is digital, that's getting close to the customer as opposed to analog. When they do distributed access architecture, let's say, there's still that cable plant that's got RF issues that they have to maintain, and that can cause some issues. So that's still a bit of an Achilles heel there for cable operators, but that's very important to customers. They want to make sure that their service is going to stay up and running. And generally, cable operators that are good will keep the service up and running. They've got tools that will help them maintain the plant, determine when there are problems that are going on, including when problems are coming with proactive network maintenance, and we'll see a slide about that here in a moment. So there's technology that can help them increase their reliability quite a bit. So something else that affects reliability, which is not related to the technology that's going to the consumer, is home networking. And actually, most of the complaints from customers when they're talking about their connection, and my connection's bad, I'm not getting good speeds, quite often it's related to their home network. They've got their router in a bad place, or it's not a good router, but they've got their Wi-Fi router somewhere. They don't have extenders, so they're walking around, or they've got their router next to a fish tank and the water's impacting the signal, and the fish tank is, or they got it in a closet. It's on one side of the house and they're doing most of the work on the other side of the house. All those kinds of things can be problems, or just sometimes just general reliability with the home networking equipment they have. So quite often that's the complaint, when somebody's not happy with their speed or their connection. So that affects both fiber and cable operators. So it's really important that the fiber and cable operators address those issues. And I would say, a lot of them try to address it by saying, get our equipment that we know is good, and then we will support it for you. You pay $10 a month. If you ever have a problem with your Wi-Fi, you call us, we'll help you out with it. So that's what a lot of operators are looking at, is they're taking ownership of that, because they realize if they don't take ownership of that, then they're going to get blamed, even if they are not the cause of the problem. In fact, we provide tech support for cable operators, and we actually do help them with networking issues, even if they don't have our service operators or the broadband operator's equipment, even if they're using some off-the-shelf router from Best Buy or Walmart or whatever. We still try to help them, because we realize that's a big part of the support problem that customers are having. So we go through and we help them, if they have any questions about that, any issues, we try to troubleshoot the problem, even to the point of saying, it looks like your internet connection is fine. It looks like maybe a Wi-Fi has issues. So it's very important from the cable operator's perspective to address those things, to address those issues. So reliability, but again, quite often the connectivity is not a problem. But again, cable operators do have more of a problem here because they've got cable, coax cable in the network, and it's not fiber all the way to the customer. Then we got low latency. Fiber is very low latency. Cable is higher. It's not bad latency, and they do have low latency DOCSIS coming out. I don't think that's actually ready yet. I think it's part of the 4.0 kind of thing, is low latency DOCSIS, which gets it very low latency for those applications that need it, but not everybody needs really low latency. Gamers are interested in this. And then future stuff, augmented reality and autonomous cars, remote surgery, those kinds of things require obviously very reliable service, but also low latency. Then you've got subscriber experience, ease of use. That's important. Subscriber experience, a lot that goes on here is not just the connection, but billing. Is the billing correct? Can you call, when you call to get support or customer service, can you actually talk to somebody? That's an important part of subscriber experience. Ease of use is generally going to be the same depending on, once you get connected, it's all pretty much the same. Then you've got integration with mobile communications. Not sure there. That could be, can you get maybe mobile service from your broadband provider in addition to a home connection? I'm not sure exactly what that is. It may mention it in here, but then we've got, here's where we're talking about proactive network maintenance. So again, reliability is very important, and it's harder for cable operators, but there are lots of tools that cable operators have access to that can help them and is helping them, especially the big cable operators, because they have all invested in proactive network maintenance for several years. They built their own tools. They are able to do this. For smaller operators, I just want to say right now, if you're a cable operator, I'll put our contact information up here. If you're a cable operator and you don't have proactive network maintenance, you really need it, especially as you get more competition, because PNM, as it's called, DOCSIS PNM, will help you actually find problems before they start impacting customers. So again, reliability is an issue for cable, and you want to make sure your customers are happy and not having to chase down problems when in the middle of actually let me go with this big one here. You don't want to chase down problems when a customer is calling and saying something's wrong. You want to try to do that proactively during a maintenance where you can take care of it. And proactive network maintenance, that's what that does. It uses the cable technology to determine where in the cable plant problems are. It kind of tells you what the problem is, what the approximate distance of the problem is in the cable plant. It can show you on a map the modems that are impacted by it, or a lot of times it's just a single modem. You can see which individual homes have problems, because quite often the problems are at the home, and it's because there's something loose. It's one of the things with cable, again. That's why it's harder for cable operators. They go fiber as far as they can, and then the RF plant that they have, that's the part of the plant that's going to be most susceptible anyway, because it's the part that's going from that drop to the home. So you could have connectors that are bad from the drop to the home, and from the home into the home, you could have a customer that's got a loose connector on the back of their modem, and that's why they're having issues. They may not realize, if I just turn this connector a quarter turn, all my problems would be gone. So that's one reason why it's so difficult for cable operators to, compared to fiber, which is just glass all the way to the customer, and then you've got going up to your router, and then the issue changes to the home Wi-Fi network. That's where you have to then focus your attention. So proactive network maintenance allows cable operators to see where these issues are and fix them before they actually start impacting customers, because there's technology in DOCSIS that allows the CMTS, which is what the cable modems connect to basically to get the service, to adjust the signals. It tells the cable modems to adjust the signals to overcome lots of issues in the cable plant. So if there's a bend in the cable that could be causing a reflection, or if there's a loose connector, a corroded connector, if there's a crack, like a squirrel chew in a cable and water gets in there, and then as the temperature changes, things happen. All of that stuff, the CMTS can tell the cable modem to change the signal to overcome those impairments. And it works really well, but the problem is it only works up to a point. Eventually, the cable modem doesn't have enough power to be able to overcome that, and then suddenly you start having customers go offline or having intermittent problems. You might have, again, if it's in the hardline plant, like a squirrel chew out in the middle of the plant, it could be impacting a number of customers. It could impact a neighborhood. And then suddenly you've got cable modems all at once starting to go out. So it's better to handle those things before that takes place proactively, and you can actually see the information that helps you go find those problems, and then you can schedule maintenance to take care of them, instead of suddenly finding out, wow, this customer called, and now this customer called, and you're out there rolling a truck trying to figure out where the problem is while people are unhappy. It's better to go ahead and do that proactively. So that's what that is. So the question here is, please rank your agreement with the following statement. My company plans to rely more heavily in the future on the diagnostic benefits and capabilities of proactive network maintenance. They asked this for the first time in 2023. And again, I think a lot of this, the reason for this is because of the fact that reliability is such an important factor as you start competing with very reliable fiber. So you can see here back in 2023, 23% said highly agree. In 2024, 29% said highly agree. Agree was 46% in 2023 and 36% in 2024. So a number of those folks, maybe some of those certainly moved into the highly agree, I guess. Then you had 30% somewhat agree in 2023 and 32% somewhat agree in 2024. And then we have some number, looks like disagree was smaller smaller in 2023 and larger 3%, not much significant though. And then highly disagree, we didn't have anybody that highly disagreed with that. But most cable operators are interested in doing P&M or are already doing it themselves. And again, they are, if it's a big cable MSO, they probably develop those tools in-house. People like Comcast and Charter and others, I think, have their own P&M tools. But again, smaller cable operators, we've got a bunch that have got our tool. So if you're a smaller operator, mid-size operator, anybody that can't afford to have your own P&M tool, reach out to us. Again, I'll put the number up here, and you can see the phone number or the email address. Just email us, or you can go to our website and look at P&M, and you'll see that. So very important. Keep doing that. Hang on. Very important for cable operators to look into P&M for reliability purposes. How much of a long-term competitive threat do you consider fiber providers? So again, we're starting to get a picture here of what cable operators are thinking about fiber. And let me say right now that there's not this war between cable operators and fiber operators as far as who has the best technology and what's going to win out in the future. It's not like Betamax and VHS, where at some point, Sony and whoever was doing the other, I think it was Sony Betamax, wasn't it? And all the others were saying, we've got the better format. I mean, cable operators know fiber is better. Cable operators have lots of fiber in their network, and they're trying to get more fiber in their network. And they know fiber is the future. And they know they would love right now to be able to wave a magic wand and say, okay, everybody who's got coax running to their home and a cable modem, we're going to wave a magic wand, and suddenly they're going to have fiber going in their home, and they're going to have an ONT instead of a cable modem, and we'll be thrilled. But they can't do that. It's just very expensive because they've got existing infrastructure there. So for them to upgrade their cable plant to DOCSIS, let's say upgrade their DOCSIS 3.1 plant with mid splits and high splits, and maybe this DOCSIS 3.1e or DOCSIS 4.0, all of those things are much less expensive than ripping out that last mile, putting in fiber to the last mile to the customer, putting in new equipment, changing out other systems that we'd need to change out to go all fiber. So you're talking about several $100s per home passed for a cable operator to several $1,000s if they were going to do all fiber. That's why they can't do that. They would love to do it though, but they can't. So here the question is, how much of a long-term competitive threat do you consider fiber providers? So they're looking at the technology they have available today with DOCSIS, what they're going to be able to do with it to get more speeds and reliability. As I mentioned, proactive network maintenance. There's also a profile management application, which we can help with as well, which determines which will get you the most out of your DOCSIS 3.1 channels. So there's things they can do to squeeze lots more speed and get better reliability out of their cable plants. So they're looking at it from that perspective, and from the perspective of we need to be on this for a while. We just don't have the ability to upgrade everybody all at once. So back in 2022, you see 54% said somewhat of a threat, 27% said a significant threat, 16% said not much of a threat, and then 3% said no threat at all. Okay, and anybody who says no threat at all, I don't agree. I think they're a little overconfident there. Then you've got 2023, that no threat went up to 4%. 20% said significant threat, 42% said somewhat of a threat, and 34% said not much of a threat. So we went from 16% to 34% saying not much of a threat, which was surprising. But I think a lot of this was, in 2022, it was like fiber. Everybody knew it was better. We were coming off of the pandemic. Everybody was like, we got to get fiber out there. But I think cable operators started to realize, you know what, we've been able to make lots of upgrades and are getting good speeds, and reliability is pretty good. People are happy with the service. We're feeling better about things. And we realized that how expensive fiber is, and we're just going to have to make do. And I think part of that is, again, feeling confident with the technology they have for the near future, right? Again, when they look forward out years and years, they realize, eventually everything's going to be fiber. They know that. So I think that was kind of, a little level setting there where they're saying, you know what, it's not so bad. We feel pretty good about this. And they're realizing also, if they're providing good service and it's fast service, if it's 3.1 or better, and they're providing more than enough download speeds and even upload speeds, even though it's not symmetrical, they're providing more than enough upload speeds, and they've already got the customer, they realize probably, you know what, people don't like change, and if we're providing good service at a fair price, that's important, and they recognize that. They recognize price is important. Then we feel pretty good about where we are right now. And then 2024, it shifted again. So you see here, not much of a threat, dropped down to 16%. So I think they're starting to see more of a threat. And you can see that here with 36% significant threat. 7% no threat at all. That went up again. I don't know why. Maybe that's some of these folks that are like, you know what, we're good for now. And then 41% somewhat of a threat. And again, if there's one reason it may not be a threat, if there's somebody providing good broadband service in an area and it's not, and there's no other competitor, there's no fiber operator, then there probably won't be for some time. Because if you've got a cable operator that's providing good service, it's expensive to deploy fiber. And the competitor is not going to get funded. If there's already service that's well over 100 by 20, it's considered served. So the government is not going to provide money for somebody to go overbuild that. So that means some company, private company, is going to have to go in, make a decision to overbuild an existing cable operator, and then try to get enough subscribers to make that make sense. Nobody's going to do that. So that could be part of that as well. Again, with a lot of these being MSOs, they already have competition. They already have, they're maybe already competing with a fiber operator. So, it's hard to tell where those numbers fall in those scenarios. But it's interesting that more are now seeing it as a competitive threat. But again, I think they do feel comfortable with where they stand, which we'll see as we go through this. So here we see which approach best matches your strategy for migrating your HFC plant to all fiber. And again, we're looking at this over the last 4 years. So here we've got, in 2021, deploy fiber in greenfield and new builds. And cable operators have been doing this over several years. If there's a new area where they don't have existing infrastructure, so again, they don't have the coax running to the customer, they have no customers, it's a new neighborhood, or they're edging out in an area where they don't have service, they're doing fiber. There's no reason for them to try to build a coax plant. They're going to go ahead and go fiber to the home, and that's what they're doing. So again, cable operators, they love fiber. But this is the only area where it makes really economical sense, is to do it in a greenfield area. It makes a lot less sense if they're in a, let's say, brownfield area where they have their own infrastructure. Augment HFC with targeted PON overlay to top users. You see that in 2021 here. And what that is if you've got nodes out there that can support, or you could have nodes side by side, but some nodes support both a DOCSIS card and a fiber card. So you could be providing DOCSIS service to an area, maybe through a remote CMTS, remote MAC-PHY, and you could have a remote OLT out in the same area providing fiber to certain customers. So if you've got a business that says, you know what, we really need 10 gig symmetrical service, like, okay, we can do that for you. So they put an XGS PON card in that, and they can then serve specific customers with fiber. Or they might have a important, some residential customers that say they're leaving because they want to go to the fiber operator. They can say, you know what, hey, we can offer you fiber. They're not going to do that. They can't afford to do that across the board, but that could be their top users that they're doing that for. Then you've got purple, natural evolution, nodes or node areas segmentation that pushes fiber deeper in the network. Again, that's going fiber deep. So that's doing, as I mentioned here, splitting nodes or putting more nodes out there and going as deep as they can to the customer using distributed access architecture with remote PHY or remote MAC-PHY. Those are two different options for getting digital fiber close to the customer so that you're limiting the amount of coax cable and limiting the amount of RF issues that you have, being able to increase speeds and reliability. Then you've got proactive replacement of coax with fiber. And again, that's overbuilding. That's saying, you know what, we've got coax going to this area of town, we're just going to overbuild it with fiber. And some operators are looking at doing that in areas where they've got older technology, and it's like, you know what, it makes more sense. It's going to cost us more because we're having to go, let's say, from DOCSIS 3.0 to DOCSIS 3.1 in this area, or DOCSIS 4.0. We're just going to do fiber. Or the DOCSIS technology we have out there, a lot of the equipment that we've got out there, a lot of the actives and the passives need to be replaced because they're old. We're just going to go ahead and do fiber. So some cable operators are doing that. Some are just saying, we're just going to do that. We're going to, any money that we spend, we're going to be spending on fiber overbuilds. But that's not the majority of cable operators. Most are looking at upgrading their current plant to be able to support faster speeds, going fiber greenfield, and then, again, offering fiber in certain areas to certain customers, or overbuilding in small areas where it makes sense, but they're not completely overbuilding themselves everywhere. So you see here, so in 2021, you've got this blue line, this deploying greenfield, has stayed pretty consistent. So all cable operators, again, that's been pretty consistent for them. This green line of augmenting fiber with targeted PON, more have been looking into doing that. It's dropped back down a little bit. The purple of natural evolution, a lot that's been trending down, but still, it's something that cable operators are looking at. And then this proactive replacement of coax with fiber, it was looks like 25% or so in 2021, bumped up over 40% in 2022, a little bit even higher in 2023, and dropped back down to a little over 30%. So still, cable operators are doing this. And again, I think a lot of it is targeted in certain areas, but there are some operators that are really moving forward on going fiber. I can't remember who they are. I don't want to name any names because I can't remember, but I know there's one or two big regional providers that are doing that. The MSOs are not doing that. So Comcast, Charter, the big guys, they are sticking with DOCSIS, just doing different ways as far as DOCSIS 4.0. Even on DOCSIS 4.0, they're doing it different ways. Full duplex versus extended spectrum DOCSIS. But this is going to be, I think, maybe some of the smaller guys that are doing this full out fiber replacement in areas, and then maybe there's a few mid-sized guys that have decided to do that. Since MSOs, actually I'll start here, considering the expense and logistical difficulties associated with fiber builds, what would be the most aggressive time frame for completely replacing your HFC network with all fiber? So this is kind of the 2050 question. That's where the 2050 project comes from. The name is, they are saying it's going to be like 2050 before everybody's off of DOCSIS. So you see here, they only have 1 year to look at on this one, but so we've got the blue is 0 to 2 years. So these are folks that are in that process. Again, they could be smaller operators that are replacing everything very quickly, or they could be some of these larger operators that are really pushing toward getting fiber everywhere. But I think you'd have to almost have to be a smaller operator to be able to do this in 0 to 2 years. You got 5%. Then we got 3 to 5 years, 19%. So that's a pretty good number that expect to do it in 3 to 5 years. Then 6 to 10 years, we have 36%. So think about that. So we're 2024, so we're talking about into the 2030s there, 6 to 10 years. And then we've got 27%, 11 to 20 years before they are completely off of HFC and all fiber. We've got 9%, 21 to 30 years. Then we got 4% beyond 30 years that they think it's going to be that long. I question that. I question some of this. I think there's going to be momentum at some point for some of these operators that are saying this, that they will actually get it done sooner. But I think still it's very true that a vast number of cable operators are going to be in this range here where you've got somewhere, let's say, between 10 to 25 years that it's going to be before they are completely fiber. Unprecedented public funding is expected to significantly shrink the digital divide over the next several years. And we're talking about the BEAD program there, $42.5 million that's going to provide broadband service to underserved and unserved areas. However, access to broadband does not ensure adoption. What's the biggest obstacle MSOs must clear to improve broadband adoption among reluctant segments of the population? This was an interesting question I wanted to include because I was talking the other day about another report from a think tank, a broadband think tank. 2 days ago, I did a stream about that. And they are saying that states should take their BEAD funding and not just focus on deployment, and I should really say not just focus on maximizing fiber, but they should be focusing on other things like affordability and digital equity, making sure everybody knows how to use the internet, those kinds of things. And my point was, no, let's get as many people that can get fiber. And I'm not talking about areas where there are cable operators, because again, if there's a cable operator that's got DOCSIS 3.1 technology, we don't need to be worrying about that. That's set. People have got broadband that they can use for years to come. But these areas that don't have good broadband, where they've got DSL, or they've got no really good service, we need to get those places connected up before we start worrying about, can they use the internet, do they know how, and can they afford it? Let's just first get the service out there. But this is a good question to ask. What do they feel like the most important thing is? And you can see here, cost of service. So they're recognizing that. That's a good thing. So the cable operators here are recognizing cost of service is important because they do, their prices tend to be higher than fiber operators, and they tend to accept when you sign up. And that's the thing, is you can sign up today and get internet for $40 a month for a full year, which you have to commit to a year. If you don't keep it for a year, then we're going to bill you back. And then after a year, we're going to start charging you a lot more. Then you have to call us and tell us you're going to leave, and then we'll drop your price again, or we'll do something, So a lot of people don't like cable operators for that. So they recognize cost of service is an issue. Digital literacy. So does somebody know how to use the internet? 23%. And we've got limited access to laptops and other devices. So they don't really have the equipment to really make use of it. And then 22% reliance on mobile service versus fixed. And I mentioned this the other day when I was talking about this, because I think a big reason a lot of people don't want home internet is because they feel they don't need it. We saw, and it could be they're really old. There's less and less of that because the people who are really old now are, a lot of them are using the internet, but it could be young people. And we saw during the pandemic that suddenly people realized, I need a home internet connection because my mobile is not cutting it, because I've got to do Zoom calls and my kids have got to do school. We need home internet. So we saw the line for broadband growth go way up after and during the pandemic, during and after the pandemic. And what we've seen since is the line come way down. Broadband has not been growing, and we've seen the number of wired connections go way down. Now, part of the reason the wired connections have gone way down is because a lot of people have picked up fixed wireless home internet from people like T-Mobile, 5G service, and Verizon, AT&T are offering that as well now. So that's been some of the reason that. But even with that, what's happened is it's not that. What's happened even with the fixed wireless is the trend is now back to where it was prior to the pandemic. In other words, we had a big area of growth, and now the growth is back where it was prior to the pandemic as far as broadband service goes. So I think a lot of that has to do with the people who went out and said, yeah, we need wired internet. Pandemic's over. A lot of them have gone back to the office, or a lot of them, even if it's not office, a lot of them are like, you know what, my phone service is good again. I don't need to do work from home. My kids don't need to do school from home. They're back at school. My phone is just fine. So that's, I think, a big portion of why people don't want it. And you're not going to be able to change their minds. So again, we don't need to focus so much on that thing. Then we've got digital literacy. This, I think, can be handled through the cable operators or fiber operators, whoever. Hold classes. Have set up classes and say, hey, we think you'd like the internet. Come to our office. We'll show you how to use it. Or go out and do that in other places. Do these little training things that you can do out. So that's one way to handle that. Pricing obviously is going to be an issue. You've always got affordability issues, so you want to be competitive. And then there's a whole question of what about folks that can't afford it? And we're this is the last month of the Affordable Connectivity Program. There's some partial payments that are coming out. There's some service providers that are continuing to do what they can to provide low-cost options, but the subsidies are gone. But that's something, again, that needs to be addressed secondary to getting broadband to everybody. And it is something it needs to be addressed, but it needs to be addressed in a better way than the ACP, which was very, very expensive. I think it allowed too many people to get access to it that didn't necessarily need the $30. And it has to be something that's approved in Congress all of the time, or a permanent kind of thing that's paid out of taxes. There's better ways to do that. We need to figure out what that is. But you can see here how cable operators are thinking about that. Then I think that's it. Yeah. So again, this is a good report. So go get it. Again, I link to this in the description so you can read about it. The 2050 project. This might be where they went through the slides themselves. I think they did a webinar that I attended. I know they did a webinar. I attended it. This may be the webinar that they did a while back, and you can see access to full report here. So you go ahead and get that. Very good report, and they will certainly go through more if you watch that. If that's the webinar, they'll certainly go through more. It may not. I'm not sure. They'll certainly go through more of the slides and their feeling on that. So I think the bottom line is that there's definitely some life left in DOCSIS and for cable operators. But again, I want to be clear. Fiber is the future. That is the preference, I think, for everybody, including cable operators. There's no doubt. Cable operators, they know fiber is where it's at, and that's where they want to be. But they also know they've got good technology right now with a lot of the upgrades that have happened in DOCSIS over the years and what they can offer now and what's coming, that they're in good shape with the current technology that they have where they have it. But again, if they're going somewhere new, they're doing it through fiber, and they're going to, over time, be changing out their cable plant to fiber technology where they can. That could be to individual customers as they need to. It could be upgrading older areas of their plant, and then just eventually saying, you know what, it's time. We need to start migrating to fiber. But they are going to spend their money right now. For the most of them are going to be spending their money on being able to do the most they can with their DOCSIS technology. And then again, if there's already a fiber competitor there, they're already dealing with that. If there's not, there's probably not going to be one in the future anytime soon, because a lot of the money that's going to be going to build fiber networks is going to be going to those areas that are unserved and underserved, not in an area where there's already a cable operator that's able to provide gig service down and really pretty good service up. So thanks for joining me today. If this was interesting, if you would give me a like on the video, I would like that. And if you're not subscribed to our channel, click the subscribe button, ring the bell, and you will be notified when I'm live. I'll see you next time for Broadband Deployment News. Take care. Bye.